pretty good? Cool. All right, let me start my recording here. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is the cervical first. And I do want to ask, did you guys print off your papers that you can take notes during this? Good, good, good. All right, thank you. So what we're going to start with first is the cervical spine. And notice that on this paper it says it's a routine cervical spine, and the exam in the computer to pick is the Owens University of Michigan case, and that's going to be down at the bottom here. So the University of Michigan cervical spine. We're going to click proceed. Okay. So I'm going to go to my cervical spine protocol. I'm going to delete out the case that popped up. I'm going to go to my cervical spine and open it up. And notice I have a cervical spine for an MS protocol. And with MS, we would want to give contrast because we want to see if any of those MS plaques would highlight. There's also a cervical spine with and without. Let's say if somebody has a tumor within the cord, and we'd want to give contrast. But I'm just going to go ahead and have you practice on the routine cervical spine. So we'll pull that over. And this is where it's going to be tricky as far as your elements in your coil, because we're going to open up our survey. I'm going to pick the spine protocol, the Sense spine. And it's just going to be Sense spine. And if I click underneath it, it tells me that I have all of these configurations. So I don't know if you can see this well or not, but I can turn on only the first element. I can turn on the first and the second. I can turn on 1, 2, and 3. I can turn on 4, or then I can turn on just 2 and then 2, 3. So I have all these configurations where I can turn on, okay? So for the cervical spine, what we are going to turn on is, let's do 1 and 2. Because pretty much after that, we're into more of the thoracic spine area, and I really only want to collect signal from where the cervical spine is positioned. Okay, so I'm going to turn on 1 and 2. Proceed and start. It's going to run that survey, and notice here is my 3-plane pilot. Okay, I can do a quick reference scan and click proceed and start. And disregard this injection. That should not be on there because we're not doing an injection. So from this 3-plane pilot then is where I can start to set up my very first pulse sequence, which is a T2 turbo spin echo sagittal. So I'm going to go to my T2 here, and I'm going to go ahead and set this up. Now notice that right off the bat, I have a field of view box. And this field of view box is in a rectangle shape because technically that's the shape that this spine is in, right? I don't need to collect signal from my mouth. I really want to just collect signal from the very top to the very bottom, and it's narrower in this anterior to posterior view. So I'm telling you to select the field of view of 240 by 160. So notice that in my field of view, I have an AP direction and a head to foot direction. So you would hopefully think that you want your head to foot to be 240 and my A to P to be 160. because I want my head to foot to be longer than my A to P. If you did it backwards and did 240 A to P and 160 foot to head, that's how your rectangle would look. So hopefully you would right off the bat say, this does not look right, okay? So head to foot is 240. A to P is 160, and sometimes you have to go back to the head to foot because it's going to try to make it into a square. I'm going to make a rectangular field of view. I'm going to do a slice thickness of 3 at 1 gap. So if I go down here, I'm at 3 slice thickness. The gap says default, so I'm going to go and do a 1 gap. Okay? I'm going to change my voxel size to 0.7 by 0.7. I want to make it a square voxel. So now look over here. I have a 0.9 by a 1.25. Okay? It's going to give me an acquisition matrix of 176 by 189. But I want to make my pictures to be better resolution, so I'm going to go smaller voxels. So now I have a matrix of 228 by 336. Now it cost me more in time, but that's okay because we've got other factors we're going to be manipulating here, okay? So I have my geometry page set the way I kind of want to like to start it with. So if I would like to, I can start to set up my slices. And notice that I have all of these red lines through it. So if I take those off, I have a really nice center slice that I can try to angle, because what I want to do is get a perfect sagittal of the upper cervical and a perfect sagittal of the lower cervical. So notice I'm kind of just trying to look through this area here, and I can try this page through and say, do I have any other better coronals or not? And right here I'm getting into part of this upper thoracic, and I can see a little bit of my cord. I can see part of my cord here. And actually right here, I can see my dens. If I move this out of the way, when you see this come up like that, that is your dens, which is kind of sitting in the middle of my C1, okay? So I want to make sure I get a slice going right through the center of that. And then I'm angling it just to see, to make sure I got a slice going right through the center of this vertebrae down below. I can also go ahead and look at my axial to the right here and see that it looks like I'm kind of taking a sagittal right through my spinous process and right through the middle of where this vertebrae is located. Okay, so I like how this looks. I can turn my slices back on if I want to and see that this is my field of view box. I'm setting up a sagittal, and my lines are on my coronal and my axial here. Okay? So according to your flip book, it might tell you here, well, what do I want to include? Well, I want to make sure I get the cerebellum down to at least the first thoracic vertebrae. So if I would use this, and I'm going to kind of page through my sagittals here, I can see that this is part of the dens here, okay? And if a lot of times this whole part of the dens, you're going to see this little black line because it's kind of like this is 1 and 2 together. Here is a part of 1. Here's part of this 2 here. The very back of that spinous process. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. I actually got down to T2 and I have all of the cerebellum on. So technically, I have included what I've needed to include. And I gave you the field of view to pick, but even if you would pick a 220 head to foot, I could still get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. I could even do a smaller field of view on this particular patient. Okay? So what you'll notice here is this protuberance here of C7. See how that comes out, and it gets a little thicker, and then you can really see how those spinous processes start to angle downward. But I can see this nice C7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and then this is 2 and 1 together. Okay? So you do not have to change this head to foot smaller. I'm just showing you that in the real world, if you wanted to go smaller, you could. But again, pretty much the radiologist of the sites that you're at will have, your sites will have this field of view pretty much set for you, that if anything, you only need to, to adjust it minorly. But you do want to make sure that you cover from left to right. Notice I'm starting on the left side. This is slice 1, and I'm going to end with slice 11. Now I'm going to go ahead and just tell you a note of what I like to do for my sagittals of the spine. Because we are doing sagittals, and we're going to take 1 slice through the center of your cord, you want your number of slices to be in an odd number. So I have 11. If I wanted to add a slice, I'm not going to add 12, I'm going to add 13, because I want 1 middle slice to be in the center, and I want an even amount of slices on either side. That just kind of makes it balanced, right? So if you feel like you need to add a slice to this, don't just add 1 slice, add 2 slices, and this way, because it is an odd, your very center slice will be in the center of your spinal canal. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay, so you really want to make sure from left to right you get the margins of your vertebral bodies. So technically I am out into where my transverse processes are, and I'm going to go all the way through to that right side. So I like how this is set up. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my contrast. I need this to be T2 weighted. This is a turbo spin echo, okay? And I have it under a range of 3,000 to 4,000, and that's really not a big range, is it? So let's kind of lower up the lower number here to the maximum to go like about 8,000. Okay, didn't really change anything because it's telling me that it still has to do 13 slices in 2 packages. I'm going to up it to 9,000, see if it does. Yep, it does the same there too. So the actual TR that I'm using is 3,000 here. Okay, if you wanted to bring it down to 2,500, you can kind of play here. It's still telling me it's still got 2 packages here, and my actual TR is 2761. Okay. My echo is 112, and that's on user defined. But according to your book, and I'm going to flip through the book here, they have a TE of 102. Now, anything above 80 is going to be T2 weighted, right? If you leave it at 120, that's fine. It's going to be more T2 weighted at 120 than it is at 80, okay? But there is always that sweet spot of, well, what do we want? And you will know as you're scanning, and I wish we could scan live, but if I did a T2 weighted with a TE of 80 and a T2 weighted with a TE of 100 and a T2 weighted with a TE of 120, then you could kind of see, well, there's a little bit of difference in the weighting, but which one do you like? They're all T2 weighted, but one of them might look prettier than the other. So that's kind of why, you know, these parameters are kind of like in a range. It's going to be up to you. It's going to be dependent on your field strength. It's going to be dependent on your coil. It's going to be dependent on your gradients that you have in your hardware. So it's at 120. You can let it at 120 if you want to go by what our book says. Oh, I don't like that. It says, well, it says 102, and that's because my TSE factor, it says I cannot get 42 trains with only a TE of 120, of 102. But I'm going to bring my trains down to about a 22, 25 anyway here. Okay? According to our book, the echo trains that they are using, and I'm trying to pull it up here. Oh, they don't have a turbo spin echo on here. So we can use, the range that we're using for our echo trains for T2s are going to be about 20 to 25, okay? So you can change it to 102, you can let it at 120. You tell me what you like for your T2 weighting. If I look over here, it says it's 9 minutes. Ooh, that is long, okay? And the way that I can bring that down is I can go to my NSA, and 8 is a very long NSA. I want you to bring it back down to, bring it back down to 4. Now we're in a nice range here. Even an NSA of 3 for a T2 weighted image is pretty good. Anything from 2 to 4 is a good NSA to use. Our book likes to use a 4. So okay, so we'll turn on 4, and it's 4 minutes and 50 seconds. If I wanted to make it a little faster, I can go ahead and make an up my echo train a little bit here. So that's kind of where you can play when you are playing in labs. See how you manipulate parameters and what does it do to your time, okay? Down the road, I'm going to show you ways where we can make this even faster by manipulating some other parameters, but I'm not going to throw that out at you yet. Yes, Courtney?
Do we have to change the voxel size?
You do, because I'm telling you to change the voxel size on your paper. It says change voxel size to 0.7 by 0.7. So that's kind of, this is your test. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, yep. And the reason I do that is because I want you to see what happens. What happens when you're changing voxel size? Tell me, what does it do to your signal? Tell me, what does it do to your resolution? Well, I know it's going to give me better resolution, and anytime I get something that gives me better resolution, it's going to cost me in signal, right? So that's where I want you to kind of just to start making this correlation. Okay, so we have this all set up the way we like. I've got my parameters set up. Now, my phase direction. What direction for a sagittal do you think you want your phase direction to be? Do you want, I have 2 to pick from. I can go to my phase, and if I click on it, I have 2 to go. I can either do foot to head or A to P. What do you think you'd want? Anybody? I would pick foot to head because of the fact you could have some swallowing going on here, okay? And you could also argue the fact, though, to say, well, I like A to P because you've got your heart down here, and I don't want this heart motion coming up into my image. And that's true as well. So you might see different places do it, a different way. It's just that you understand that I can go foot to head or A to P. I like foot to head. I like to keep any kind of motion from my mouth. I like it to go in this direction versus going across. And what I can do for my heart motion, and this is where we talk about rest labs. I can go to my rest labs and add a rest lab. And I'm going to put it on free. Trying to find my rest lab. Where'd my rest lab go? For some reason, I cannot get my rest. There it is. There, I'm sorry. I had to turn on my slab volume. There. So here is my rest lab. And if I would pick my phase to go head to foot, I could put a rest lab down over my heart area. And I do not have to worry about then heart motion coming up. It's going to hit this rest lab and it's going to go ahead and eliminate it from my picture. So if you would say, I want my phase to go A to P, and then I'm not going to worry about my mouth motion here because I'm going to take my rest lab and I'm going to put it anterior. You can do that as well. And then you can go ahead and change your phase direction to go A to P. So now if you go A to P, by me changing that, look what it did. It changed my field of view. So I have to go back to my field of view and change it where my rectangle's the other way. So I'm going to change it back to head to foot here. But I'm not asking you to turn on a rest slab for your practical. I'm just showing you that as we're scanning, there are things we can do to eliminate flow from one direction to the next. So, does that make sense to you guys? Yes or no? Somebody just texted me that we can't see you. Well, the reason you can't is because I have my video on the screen. Okay? So I can't have two cameras on opposite pictures. But for this first part, just set up a T2 sagittal. You tell me, what direction do you want your phase to be? Do you want it head to foot? And if you do, why? Do you want it A to P? And if you do, why? Either way, I'm going to have to turn on fold over because I'm going to have this wrapping in head to foot, but I'm also going to have the mouth wrapping into the back A to P. So either way, I'm going to need fold over suppression turned on. Okay? I'm going to proceed and start. My second set is my stir sagittal, and I'm going to want to set this up the exact same way that I set up my T2. So I'm going to do a 240 by 160, okay? I'm going to want, I had 13 slices. I had 3 at 1 gap. I know that. I'm going to make sure I'm in the center and angle it again because I angled it on that first one, right? Remember that? Right through the center. I'm going to go ahead and set up my field of view about the same. And sometimes, like you can just look at your cerebellum and say, okay, I'm at the very top of the cerebellum here, or you can count and say, okay, I'm at the very bottom here. So notice I'm right at this disc space. And I can bring it down a little bit, and I'm at the exact same there, okay? So I set this up identical. Now, I'm telling you to change the NSA to 3. I'm gonna go to my motion tab. And what does it do? Well, basically you should right off the bat just know it's going to scan faster, right? What happens? It's gonna make my scan a lot quicker. I'm gonna go to my contrast. I'm gonna go to my TR, my TE. So in your book, your sagittal stir, they like to use TEs in the 60 range. And they have the TR at a range of 25 to 4,000. And the actual TR is going to be 25 there. It's 2.5 minutes. Anything over, for a stir, anything over that 2,500 is fine, or 2,000 is even fine. So let's say if I even do 2,000 to 4,000, the actual TR is 2202. That's fine. The thing that I want you to think about with a stir is it's an inversion recovery. And so, oh, that's right. I need the, somebody just tried calling me. Can you guys hear me okay?